So I'm Lju Lazarevic. I am a member of the developer relations team, and I will be talking about how to get up and running with Neo4j Desktop. So what we're going to be covering in this session, what we're going to be covering in this session today, we're going to be having a look at the different ways that the database is available. So what are the different ways you might be interacting with Neo4j? I'm then going to go through and have a look at the anatomy of Neo4j Desktop. So I'm going to show you various key parts of the product. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at how would you go about adding a database, how would you do any configuration changes if required to it, and how would you get it started in Desktop. Then we're going to have a quick look at how would you go about adding remote databases, and the two remote databases we're going to be having a look at is how would we connect to a Neo4j Sandbox. So Neo4j Sandbox is a no installation, no downloads way that you can go away and explore Neo4j either with one of the example use cases provided there, or alternatively, you can load up a blank sandbox and bring in your own data. And we're also going to have a look at how you can connect to Neo4j Aura. So Neo4j Aura is the Neo4j database as a service offering that is available. We're also going to have a look at how would you add plugins. So plugins such as the Graph Data Science Library, the APOC library, which my colleagues Will and Jennifer will be talking about later. But also, if you've got your own plugin that you've designed, I'll show you where you can find the plugin folder to add them in. And last but not least, we're going to very quickly cover how would you find and add graph apps. And my colleague Adam is going to go and provide a more in-depth talk about what graph apps are and how ultimately would you go around building one. So, okay, so the different ways that the database is available. So we touched on Sandbox. So one way you can go and start a Neo4j instance is through Sandbox. So this is a time-limited trial where you can go and get an instance of Neo4j up and running without needing to download anything, without having to configure it or install it or do any setup like that. So it's a way you can go to the website, it will get spun up, and you can pick what kind of use case you want to experiment with as well. And this is a really great way to go and have a go, get your hands on Neo4j and have a play with the graph database without necessarily having any sort of ramp up on trying to get that working. So that's one way you may interact with the database. Another way may be you decide to run Neo4j as a console, so effectively without the various helper features that sit around Neo4j. So this is what you would do if you went to the download center and you downloaded the server edition of either a community or enterprise edition. So this might be another way you run. So effectively you're looking after everything and you're going to get it running and so forth. Another way you might interact with the database is through Neo4j Aura. So as I mentioned before, this is Neo4j's database as a service. So this is our cloud offering of Neo4j. And this is something that effectively we look after all of the configuration and management and running of the database, and all you need to worry about is just getting your data in there and querying it and so forth. So that's another way you may interact. And the main way that we're going to be covering today, you may be interacting with the database is through Neo4j Desktop. So Neo4j Desktop is effectively running the server version of the database, the console we can see here. But it provides this nice user experience of being able to manage the database instance for you, as well as any other bits and pieces that connect in there. And that's what the focus of the talk today, about how we get started on that. So let's have a look at the anatomy of Desktop, which we're going to do now. So this is Neo4j Desktop. So let's have a quick look around the features that we have in here. So what you'll notice on the panel on the left, you'll have this picture of a folder, and here it lists out all of the projects. So in Desktop, what you do to get started, and we'll have an example, look at an example of this shortly, you will go and you'll create a new project, and each project is a self-contained folder, if you will, where you'll have the database associated with that project. You will also add in any plugins that are associated for that specific database and so forth, along with any files you want to import or any plugins that you're using. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. Other things to look at as well. The icon here, this allows you to manage your graph apps. So you can have a look at what graph apps you've already got installed. So a graph app is an application that you run that helps you improve your developer experience with the database. And there's a large number of applications that are available, which my colleague Adam is going to discuss. But we'll have a look quickly about how you might explore them and how you would go about adding them. You'll notice a picture of the bell here. So this is the notification center. So this will let you know if there's any new versions of desktop available. What you may notice as well, sometimes you may be given an instruction to update your version of desktop to the latest version, because, for example, a new plugin or a feature has come out, and you may go here and discover that you can't see any updates. So you may want to check whether you're in offline mode. And how we do that is here in the settings section. So you've got a number of settings with regards to sending statistics of use and so forth. But one thing you'll notice as well is this section here for offline mode. So what happens is if you're using desktop and maybe there's some problems with your internet or there's some temporary blips, what desktop will do is it'll switch you over to offline mode to make sure you have a smooth experience. So it's worth checking here if you are having any errors such as in offline mode or so forth, to come over here to the settings section and just check there to see whether or not the offline mode has been enabled. And you have other information about the setup for desktop. And last but not least, you've got a section here for adding software keys. So this will be for some of the plugins that may have software keys associated with them. So up until recently, Bloom for Desktop had a license key. This is where you come to add them, and you effectively just click the add software key section here and you paste and code your license. So that's a very sort of quick look at the left bar. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at adding a database. So I'm going to start with creating a project. So I'm going to click new, and this is going to set up a new project for me. And I'm going to give this a sensible name. So you can give your project a name, and what I tend to do with the projects, I tend to do one project per use case. So that's why you may have observed I have many projects on the slide there, and that's because I create a project per use case, and it helps me sort of organize my things. So that's the principle there that I use. So we've got the our project set up. So now we need to add some things to it. So I'm going to add a database. So if I click here on the Add Database button, I'm greeted with a couple of options here. So I can either choose to connect to a remote graph, which we're going to do shortly. So this is if we want to connect to an instance of Neo4j that's not on our local machine. Or the other option we can do is create a local graph. And what this will do is this will go off and create a copy of the Neo4j database on our local machine. So I'm going to click on that. I need to provide it with a password. So I'll provide it with a password. And then I'm going to, you can click here and you can choose what version of the database you'd like to use. And then once you've filled out all the information, so I'm just going to check if I've got this already downloaded. I do. So I'm going to click on create. And then what that's going to do is it's going to go away and create a copy of the database. So just a little bit to understand what's going on under the hood. So it's effectively taking a copy of the Neo4j database and all of the various components that you'd have with that. So any of the scripting, any of the shell tools that you've been using and administrating tools, those are all copied over. So it's effectively the equivalent of going to the download center and downloading a copy of Neo4j database. So that's what's copied over. So what you'll find is, for those of you who are already quite familiar with using Neo4j, if you're using any of the admin tools or the database loading tools and so forth, that's all still available and it's in there. So the database has been added. And if we want to do some kind of configuration to the database, what we can do is click on the three dots here. And then this will give us an option to manage the database. So if I click on manage, you will see, as well as getting some details, and this will give the logs. Of course, we've not started the database yet, so we have no logs there. But if you click on the settings option, this will display you the neo4j.conf file. So this is very useful if you want to make some changes. So for example, if you were bringing over a data store for an older version of Neo4j. You can set the upgrade flag to true. You can also do any configuration with regards to any plugins that you are bringing in that aren't the standard ones that come with desktop and so forth. So this is where you would come to adjust any configuration settings. You've also got the administration setting here if you want to change your password. You've got the upgrade option here if you want to upgrade your database to a newer version of Neo4j. And you've got a couple of ways you can manage plugins. So you can either manage them here from the plugins tab in the manage database option, and you can see here you have an option to install APOC. Or if you go back to the project, what you'll see at the bottom of the screen, you also have an option to add plugins here. And the plugins, again, these will vary on the version of the database that are available. But what you will find is the plugins will automatically be available for the version of the database that you have. So, for example, APOC is available for Neo4j 4.0, so we can add that to this database. And so this is all the ones that we currently have, sort of like officially supported by us. But if you create your own plugin, then again you can go in, you can effectively click on the three dots, go to manage, and then you'll see an option here to open folder. And if you click down here, you will see the plugins folder. So if you click on plugins, it will open up the directory where it is. And just a quick explanation of what's going on here. So if you click here, this is the unique the project folder, the database for the project folder that's been created. And if I go in here, and for example, if I go into bin, you'll see all of the sort of various tools and scripts that are available there. So you can see it's a copy of the database we installed. So you've got a folder to drop you into plugins. So I'll get you straight into plugins, so you can drop your jar in there and then you sort of update the configuration. And same idea as well. If you want to drop some flat files that you want to import, you can put them straight into the import folder and so forth. So that's how you can get sorted and up and running. Just a quick mention here, a new feature in Desktop 1.2.7 is this idea of files. And what you can do here is if you've got a browser guide that you've been building, so yes, you can in fact create your own browser guides, and it's a great experience, do have a go. But what you can do is if there's any particular files, including browser guides, you can add them here in the files section, and it allows you to launch them within that project. So let's have a look. So we've got a database set up. So all I need to do now to get my local instance running is press start. So we press start, so we're going to let the database get started. And in fact, I can show you, if we go back into manage, I will show you the log file so you can see it's generated some, so you can inspect those. So whilst that's getting up and running, let's start having a quick look at how we'd connect to a remote graph. So what we can do is we click on add database. You've got the option here to connect to a remote graph. So if I click on that, what you need to do is provide the connection URL for there. And then on the next screen, it's going to ask you for some credentials. So let's have a look at Aura as an example. So I'm just going to shrink the screen. So if I go to Aura, and I've gone away and I've created a database ahead of time, and you can see you get a connection URI here. So this is what we're going to take. And if I go back to the desktop and click next, oops, should put in the paste it. So I've literally just copied and pasted that URI that was provided. And then I need to provide some credentials. I'm just going to take a copy of the password that I took earlier. So Aura uses an encrypted connection, so we need to select this and save. And that's how we'd connect to a remote server. So in this case, we're connecting to Aura. So when we're launching, so we've got a database started. So we're going back now to the local database. If I want to launch Neo4j browser, so this is, for those of you who've used Neo4j before, this is more than likely the one you will have seen, the graph app you've always seen, that this is browser. You just click on the open button and it gets started up. So as you can see, we've got our database up and running. If, however, you would like to run one of the other graph apps that you've installed, you just click on the button here. So if I click here, you can see these are all of the graph apps that I've already got installed. So If I go back to the graph apps, you can see, as we talked about before, this is where you click on them. Another way you can launch them is if you click on the little arrow here. And I'm just going to quickly show you the graph apps gallery. So if I click on this, this will show you all of the various publicly submitted graph apps that have come in. And again, my colleague Adam's going to talk through some of these. So you've got the graph apps, you can install them, and then when they're installed, you can use them. So if we go back to the project, you click down here, you can see these are the graph apps that you can launch. So let's have a go at connecting to Aura. So I'm just stopping my local instance of the database. So we talked about adding the credentials. So if we have a quick look again, so I've copied and pasted the URI that was provided. I've put in the username and password that are required for the Aura database. And then all I need to do next is just press the connect button. And that's going to set up the connection. And then once that's finished, same idea as before. If you want to launch Neo4j browser, I just click on open. And it launches the browser. And there we go. And you can see we're now connected onto the Aura instance. And again, same idea with Sandbox. So let's say that you've been working with the Sandbox. You've gone up there. You've started up your trial. You've been working on a use case, and you now want to, rather than working on the interface there, you want to work with some of the features that you've got in Neo4j Desktop. We can do that. Similar process. I'm going to be adding a remote graph, and I'm going to go over to Neo4j Sandbox. So you got the address here, so you can either neo4j.com/sandbox or sandbox.neo4j.com. And if I click on New Project, I'm going to pick blank Sandbox. There we go. Launch the project. So that in the background is going to go away and create the Sandbox for me. And when that's started, again, I'm going to show you where you can get the credentials for that Sandbox, and you're going to add those into Neo4j Desktop. So I'm going to have a quick look if we've got any questions whilst. Okay, cool. So we've got Sandbox running. So maybe we choose to open it with browser here, or what I can do instead, I'm going to click on the little down arrow here, and then I click on here and I'm going to get some connection details. So what I'm interested in, I want to get this vault URL. So I'm going to take that. And I need to provide some credentials. So I'm just going to have a quick look. So here you will find the username and the password. So I shall take that and put in the username and password. And save. And same idea if I connect. And there we go. And now we've connected to Sandbox. So very quickly shown you how you can sort of connect to a local database as well as remote databases. And we've done remote databases using Aura and Sandbox.